The following program and contents, including the views and opinions expressed by the host and any guest speakers, are solely for informational and entertainment purposes. The views and opinions expressed are not endorsed or supported by Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, their employees, affiliates, or advertisers. The host and guest speakers are solely responsible for their own perspectives, and their views do not reflect those of Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, their employees, affiliates, or advertisers. The information provided in this program should not be considered as professional advice or as a substitute for professional consultation. Listeners and viewers are encouraged to form their own opinions and seek independent advice when necessary. Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, their employees, affiliates, and advertisers hereby disclaim any liability for any claims, damages, or losses incurred as a result of the information presented in this program.
Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
The oldest Tibetan shamanic tradition and religion is Bon. The Bon monks survived war and persecution to continue practicing today. Stay tuned as we explore their amazing story. Mission Evolution Radio TV is brought to you on the X-Zone TV and the X-Zone Broadcast Network. We're produced by Relmar McConnell Media Company with studios and corporate offices in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. With us this hour to discuss the salvation of the Tibetans' oldest religion is Jackie Cole. Jackie is a retired veterinarian who's been a Bon student for over 20 years with many contacts in the worldwide Bönpo community. She lives in Galveston, Texas, with co-author and husband Harvey Rice. Their book is entitled Flight of the Bon Monks, War, Persecution, and the Survival of Tibet's Oldest Religion. Her website, flightofthebonmonks.com. Jackie, thank you so much for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Oh, thank you. It's a joy to be here.
So let's start out with, what is Bon?
Oh, yes.
It's not a bonbon. You don't eat it, right?
Well, maybe. It's Bon is the native religion of Tibet. It nowadays looks very similar to Tibetan Buddhism because it was there traditionally. Actually, the founder of Bon was believed to have been, according to the histology of Bon, to have been there 18,000 years.
Oh my goodness.
So it's considered to be extremely old. It was intermeshed with the Xiongzheng kingdom, which had incorporated the edges of Tibet and then later part of Tibet prior to that kingdom coming into effect. The Buddhists came to Tibet in the 7th century, and the Bon was suppressed at that point, and began to make a comeback again in the 11th century. In the meantime, the two religions of Buddhism and Bon sort of intermelded and co-opted many of the same things. So if without knowing about it, you would look at it and seem to think that it's much the same in terms of iconography and philosophy, but the Bön is a little bit older and has some aspects to it that are different than Tibetan Buddhism.
Well, I know that Buddhism is practiced widely in some communities here in the country, but from what I understand, talking to Buddhists from Tibet, is that it's very different in form. Really, that a lot of it's been left behind, and it's kind of mind heavy. Have you heard that about the Bön, or is Bön practiced here, or where are we with that?
There are Bön communities in the United States and Canada and in other countries around the world as it has spread since the diaspora. So they are still tiny. Now, in Tibet, about one third of the population was Bön. And in Nepal, as adjoining in the Himalaya region there, Bön was traditional as well in clans and tribes and villages. So, but it is tiny, and with the persecution of Bön from the 7th through the 11th century, and then even later, people thought that it was sort of a black religion, and that it used too much. It was almost demonic, but it was misunderstood because it is certainly not like much like Buddhism. Its religion is kindness based on compassion and wisdom. Glinda, when you were talking about mind heavy, do you know what you were referencing with that statement? That it was mind heavy?
Yeah, from different sources that I've talked to is once it got moved to the United States, because we're pretty much cerebral,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
that then it got leaned that direction, more so that incorporating some of the more what have been interpreted as dark, shamanic, earth-based aspects.
Well, the Bun is definitely has more of those than does the Tibetan Buddhism. And so there are practices for body, speech, and mind in order to balance all of that, because it is necessary to have all of that balanced in order to be able to come to a realization of the mind, and the mind being your heart and what is coming from your inner being, your true nature. And so you need a balance of body, speech, and mind in order to achieve all that. There are a number of practices that are earth based and then based on the five elements and the connections of that and balancing yourself with that.
Pretty
That was
fast,
the thing
pretty
that
fascinating. Yeah.
drew me to it as much as anything else, was because of the earth based and aspects of it and the grounding of it in that.
Yes, because if you take out the earth-based part, don't you start to lose some of the, like you say, grounding? That makes sense, but also the bringing it into this reality versus still in the ethers of the mind.
Definitely. It just makes we are lucky enough, the Buddhists or the Bonpos feel that being in a human body is the most lucky thing that you can have. And so because you are able to think and receive the Dharma and then be able to practice it. So we need our bodies in order to be able to practice this. And it's all integrated there.
Right. So, what is Dharma?
The Dharma is the teachings. So the Dharma it includes whatever teachings you receive orally. It includes the texts, and the basis for the religion is the Dharma is the teachings that provide the curriculum.
And within that, are there activations that are not necessarily in writing and in physical form?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean by activations. There, go ahead.
Well, sometimes in different religions, being in the presence of a master brings about some kind of energetic shift in the student.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. Well, Of course, it's always easier to be taught, and they do suggest that if you're going to go on the path of the curriculum, that you need a teacher. And it's for that reason. And it's also in order to make sure that you don't go down the wrong path thinking that you're doing something correctly when you're headed into some deep, dark place. I find when I take classes that to be with someone who is accomplished and has accomplished some of the things that they're trying to teach us makes it so much easier. Just their essence changes the atmosphere in the room. We also in this tradition have what's called a transmission. When a teacher has taught you the lessons out of a book or out of a teachings, then at the end of that, they give you what's called a transmission. And that's a heart to heart transmission of it, so that that is, because with this tradition what you want to do is study something, so you learn it, you listen to it, then you think about it and study it, and then you practice it. And it's the practice that actually gets you where you're the intended result to be. They
Does it integrate it? Bring it all the way through the physical when you're practicing.
Yes, of
And
course.
yeah, and
Yes,
so by
yeah.
activation with transmission, those are the same things for me. That's what I was talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there's also, of course, when you're practicing with a master, the atmosphere in the room is more open, and which it makes it easier for you to settle into whatever state it is that you need to be to receive the or to understand the teachings.
In this day and age, there's a lot of self-professed masters. Master this, master that, master shaman, master. Okay, I mean it's used a lot. How can you tell if you're in the presence of a true bone master or a wannabe?
The the tradition has a um, curriculum, and the curriculum is taught in the monasteries, and the monks can go there, so that the monasteries in the Tibetan tradition are like universities. So they're schools as opposed to places where people come to stay and live. And that's unfortunate, but also fortunate, because then once they're finished with their school, unless they stay there like at a university to do more academia or to stay in administration, then they're expected to go out into the world to take care of Bun and their families and their people. And so we have been the beneficiary of this disbursement of people that have learned this. So all of my teachers, the ones that we explored the story of Bun with, are all graduates of the monastery universities.
So they
So
went
they
over
have
to Tibet and were part of the university there.
they started out in Tibet as part of the universities there. The mother monastery in Tibet was Minri. There were monasteries all over Tibet at the time, and back in the 50s. And they started there and got their what's called a geshe degree, which is equivalent of a PhD. Usually takes about 12 to 15 years to graduate with a geshe, and it covers a lot of different subjects and titles. And so the and you will hear them called geshe so and so, geshe denma, geshe yongdrong, geshe, and so forth. So they're called different, their name plus geshe being their title. If you have a teacher who's a geshe, then you know that they have been through not only the learning but the experiences that they need to have to be able to be qualified to teach.
That's pretty much of a huge dedication of time, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Dedication of time and their life for that. The the whole uh, curriculum, when you teach, you have to have, there is a deal where they teach you who's a qualified teacher and then who's a qualified student. And
Oh,
you want
interesting.
to, yes, and so you want to make sure that if you're going to put in the time and energy, just like you were talking about in terms of a big commitment, that you have someone who is a qualified teacher and that student is qualified and that the two match up.
The two match up.
So
Well, it's
exactly.
time. It's time for us to take a station break.
Okay.
Jackie and I will return shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
Welcome to Haunted Indian River County by Larry Lawson. Indian River County is an idyllic vacation spot on Florida's east coast, not far south of Cape Canaveral. Known as part of the state's famed Treasure Coast, many are unaware of the deep and fascinating history this area played in the development of the Sunshine State. Also lost among its visitors and residents are the chilling stories of the hauntings that accompany this rich history. It is here that a man named Waldo still looks after his family and properties, 6 decades after his death. Or a retired preacher is seen digging up his hidden treasure, days after he died. Larry Lawson spent more than 40 years in the law enforcement and criminal justice education profession. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Nova Southeastern University and a master's degree in public administration from Troy State University. He serves on the board of directors of the Indian River County Historical Society, is the director of the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation, and is the owner of Indian River Hauntings, LLC, where he provides historical and paranormal tours and events. He has been actively researching the history and paranormal legends of the Treasure Coast of Florida since 2010. Larry is currently the host of Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show on the Exozone Broadcast Network and the past host of Encounters with the Other Side on WPSL Radio in Fort Pierce, Florida. Pre-order your copy of Haunted Indian River County by Larry Lawson on Amazon.com today.
Bon, religion, shamanic form, healing modality, or superstition. With us this hour is Jackie Cole, the co-author of Flight of the Bon Monks, War, Persecution, and Survival of the Oldest Tibetan Religion. Jackie, what is it? I mean, when I made that list, is it a healing modality? Is it a religion? Is it a shamanic form? Is it superstitious? Where does it fit into those categories?
I would have to say it's all of those except superstition, in that it is a religion and that it is a spiritual tradition, long-standing spiritual tradition. Does have healing modalities within it, built within it. And then you said one more.
Let's see what I say.
Anyway, it is
Shamanic form.
shamanic form. And there are, depending on your definition of shamanic form, there are some practices that some people would consider shamanic practices. You understand that this is formed in a part of the world, this religion came to a part of the world where everything is harsh. Everything is difficult, especially the natural things. And so great reverence was developed for the natural area, and then also there was great need to protect from the natural forces and to enhance whatever natural forces were there in order to grow your food and protect yourself and your animals and so forth. And so there were a number of earth-based, which a lot of people consider that to be shamanic things, that were practices that were developed as a part of this Bön, so that they could deal with this, what they considered to be the spirits of the earth and the spirits of the mountains and the spirits of the lakes and so forth.
So, how does that then translate to today as being useful in our modern world?
I'm an environmental activist and what I would consider an eco warrior as best that I can be, and so I see that it's as applicable, if not ever before, because we are indeed in need of connection to the earth and its spirits.
So the rebalancing
Absolutely.
back to the way life
Absolutely.
works.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And that with that, it's an interconnection because if we can rebalance ourselves, then we're more likely to work with rebalancing than the earth. And if the earth and its elements are more balanced, then we're likely to be more balanced so that we can work back and forth between the two. We're all a part of, there's nothing that's independent. We're all interdependent.
So is that balance brought back through ritual? Is that what's used?
There are a number of those. The Bon religion has both sutra, tantric, and dzogchen. Sutra is a path of renunciation so that you know what's right or wrong and what's easier, and you can stay on that path. And then tantric is a path of transformation so that anger is transformed into love and jealousy is transformed into generosity so that you can open your path and change things as necessary to make your life better and the lives of the beings around you better. And then Dzogchen is a path of great, what they call a great perfection. That is a path where if you leave everything as it is, it just dissolves away and becomes perfection. So that if anger were to arise, you would be able to look at it, hold it, look at it, and if you just kept looking at it, it would dissolve away. Yeah, I know. I agree. This is a practice that people practice for lifetimes in order to try to learn it and to practice it. So, but we were talking about, is there ritual? There are within this lots of rituals built in. They actually talk about the 9 ways of Bön, and each one layers on top of the other until you get up to Dzogchen. And so, because you can't do Dzogchen if your body's not healthy, you can't do Dzogchen if you are balanced. You can't do Dzogchen if you're starving or if the world around you is falling apart. So you use the lower level practices or what's considered different level practices in order to balance your earth and the things around you so that the conditions are optimum for you to study and practice.
So once you get the optimum conditions, then you can raise your frequency would be a word we use in today's language, enough to achieve mastery. Is that what we're looking at there?
Yes. Yes. And then the mastery can come instantaneous, but for most people it's a lifetime. In fact, they or multiple lifetimes. So since Bun is one of the religions that believes in reincarnation, there's definitely an opportunity for improvement next time.
So when you say they believe in reincarnation, do they believe in simply human to human, or human to alien, possibly, or human to animal? What's the belief there?
Well, there's 6 realms in the Bun tradition, and that goes from the hell realm, and hungry ghost animals are the 3 lower realms, and then, human demigods and gods are the upper realms. And by that, they don't mean deities, it's just a higher realm. For example, the God realm is one where everything is perfect. And they don't feel that that's the optimum one because everything is so perfect, you have no motivation to study or to learn or to look for another way to live. And so we've all in our lives today lived through all those realms depending on our circumstances. The people in Gaza are living in the hell realm right now, and the people in the well, who knows has the God realm right now, but we're in the human realm. Our animal friends are in the animal realm. We can see them. Some of these are formed and some of them are formless.
So what do you mean by some are formed and some formless? The animals or everything in general?
Well, usually the hell realm and the hungry ghost realm are considered formless, but they can be formed. You can be a human and still be having the circumstances of the hell realm, or you could be human and still have the circumstances of the hungry ghost realm where you never feel satisfied. You always want, there's always a need for more and more. So you're a hungry ghost wandering the earth.
Sounds like our society.
Well, that's being a human is we have those problems, and that's what we're trying to overcome by calming and taming our minds.
So when you're working with these different realms, are you kind of indicated there are places that you can move in and out of, different depending on circumstance and your alignment. Um, so is the tradition designed to help you get control over that movement?
Well, you move in and out at reincarnation. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
that the other things is that for example, if you are in a bad state here, you're a human being, but you're in a really bad place. Those are circumstances that appear to be the hell realm, but you're still in the human being realm. And the idea that what the tradition does is that it teaches you, it's actually a curriculum for mind training. And it's not just your brain, but your whole inner mind to head towards your natural way of being, your natural state. And as you go through this curriculum, you get easier and easier and easier in all of the things that you're doing. And so then that will affect your next life. And so whether or not you're born the next time you come, you're born in a human realm again, which is, if unless you can achieve enlightenment, then the next stitch that you want is to be born in the human realm so that you can try again.
Do people or beings choose to come back to the human realm to be of assistance?
If they're enlightened, yes. Yes, if they're enlightened, that's the choice of the bodhisattva, which is a vow that if you choose, you can make the choice of a bodhisattva, and that is that you're going to work for enlightenment so that you can help all sentient beings.
Is there a timelessness to this? I mean, if you're reincarnated, can you be reincarnated into the future, to the past?
I don't know.
There's a good question, right?
Yes,
We can't have a
there
time
is.
machine and pick our destination, right?
Not that I know of. I think some of the enlightened beings are able to time travel, but I don't know anything about that really. This We have a hard enough time. It's like, I don't know if you know, but the Dalai Lama at one point says, "I don't worry about my past lives because I have enough to do to take care of this life right here."
Absolutely.
And so that's sort of that's I think there's some amazing things that are capable, but I don't know them.
So, what drew you, and how did you become interested in, and how did you find the bond?
That's really an interesting question. I was raised in the Methodist church, but I left the Methodist church. I left all Christianity sometime around high school, and I was up decades later. I had a dream, and I had a Buddhist monk sitting in my backyard like a garden statue. And then I had all these other Buddhist monks come with the horns and the drums and the uniforms and the whole nine yards, come and take him away to go be my teacher. And I thought to my when I became fully awake, I said, "This is too auspicious. It's too noticeable. It's too wild not to pay attention to." So I went to the half price bookstore the very next day and I looked on the religious shelf and I found every book, and I could tell by the color of the robes and so forth that this was a Tibetan monk. And so I took every book on Tibetan Buddhism off the shelf. and took it home and started studying. And it took me a couple of years of looking around and going to hear this teacher, or going to see this, or going to do that until I stumbled into Bön and it stuck. And I think one of the main reasons is because it is so earth-based.
It's substantiable. I mean, what I mean, sustainable in that
Yes.
it's tied back to physical reality more so than a lot of religions. Yes.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It includes, like I said before, it includes practices for the body, speech, and mind to all balance. All three is critical.
It's critical for our health. It's critical for our future, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, indeed.
So we're just about out of time in this segment. But when we come back, I'm going to ask you, why did you pick Bond instead of anything else?
Okay.
Okay. Jackie and I will be right back to continue this discussion. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Are you interested in evolving with the times and becoming all you can be? Don't you wish there was one place to find the latest information to help guide you through the process? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, host of Mission Evolution Radio TV. Join me on my mission to find the latest evolutionary knowledge and tools. The guests on Mission Evolution are leading experts in a wide variety of divergent topics, including allopathic, holistic, and integrative medicine, epigenetics, enlightenment, quantum physics, meditative practices, environmental issues, spiritual evolution, trauma healing, and so much more. Mission Evolution Radio TV is aired worldwide through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, X-Zone TV Channel 32 on Simul TV. You can enjoy our archives of radio or TV shows with our compliments at www.missionevolution.org. Come see the amazing lineup of guests and topics. With more than 200 episodes to choose from, you're sure to find what you're looking for. Visit www.missionevolution.org. Can you heal with Bond? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing the ancient Bond is Jackie Cole. Her website, flightofthebondmonks.com. Jackie, just before we close, I said I was going to ask you why you really decided on Bond. And you also mentioned that there are healing modalities in Bond. So why did you decide on Bond versus any other Tibetan practice? And have you experienced the healing as a result?
I took some classes that were general, and one of the things that one of the teachers said was it's better to pick something and go deep to it rather than try to surf across several and figure out which one means something more to you. So when I found Bun by accident, completely and totally by accident, I started taking some classes in it, and it fit for me personally. And like we said, I think in part because it was earth-based, and then had some earth-based practices. And so then I just decided that I would try it out and stay with it for a while. And 20 years later, here I still am. So it does seem to fit. And there are healing practices within it. In fact, almost everything that we do can be applied to healing. You can start with something as simple as a small short mantra, the heart mantra that we use. Om Matri Muye Sale Du. And you can repeat this, and it conjures up the higher of the deities as well as the guardians of the six realms. We talked about the six realms, the different ones. And so then you sort of conjure them as protectors. And so you say this mantra over and over again. It helps to focus the mind and calm the body and calm your heart. And also the vibrations in your throat have particular healing properties in and of itself. Then what we can do is take that and blow the essence of that mantra into a bottle of water. And then you can use that to drink and to help to heal. So that's just one very simple little healing practice that we have. There are different in the tantric practices. I remember I mentioned a tantric practice where you transform. Well, one of the things that we sometimes do, we'll imagine ourselves transformed into a deity, and several of those are specifically for healing. As a veterinarian, if I was feeling nervous about a process that I was going to have to do, or unsure, or I wanted something special for an animal I was working on, I would just sort of hum the beginning of the mantra to myself and just sort of take on the energy of that healing deity. And then it would be helpful to me in terms of the process for the animal that I was working on.
It sounds like you're talking about energetic healing, vibrational
Yes.
healing.
Yes, I'm sure it could be called by that by many people.
So, does each deity kind of stand for a particular set of frequencies that perform what the deity stands for?
I've never had it taught to me in terms of frequencies, so I can't really say that. But there are different aspects. I mean, the deities are universal, and whatever you need. For example, if one day you need more peace and more calm, you might call on a different one than you would to be if you are in need of some wrathful or some protection, some very fierce protection. Then you might call on another. And so the different deities are all a universal one, but they manifest in themselves in the different ways that would be helpful to a person.
So, am I understanding you to say that there is just one deity, one God,
There's
basically?
no there's not one God, but the essence of it is universal. For example, the protective deity is can be as calm and peaceful as the peaceful deity, and the peaceful deity can be healing and wrathful as well. But they generate a different persona in order to match what you need.
To counterbalance what's out of balance.
Yes, exactly. That's
Okay.
exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. We're talking pretty much the same thing there, I think.
Yes,
So it's like all the energy comes from one place, but then it divides itself out through the deities based on what's needed in the moment.
right. Now,
Makes sense.
Bun does not recognize an external God.
Hmm.
It's all of this is manifest from your own true nature. And so they don't recognize that like a one God out there that this is different forms of. These are all arise from the true nature.
Is that the true nature of everyone and everything?
Yes.
Now that
Yes.
makes sense to me.
Yes.
So I understand that the practitioners of the form were persecuted at one time. Why were they persecuted? Where were they persecuted? And what happened?
In the 7th century, the king of Tibet decided that he wanted to adopt Buddhism as the official religion. And so he outlawed Bön, and he told the Bönpos that they needed to either convert to Buddhism or leave the country or be terminated. And so most of them, what happened was that some of them gone ahead and converted to Buddhism so that they could continue to practice their own practice, but officially be Buddhist. And then others went into hiding. Many of the texts were hidden and later were came out and began to be discovered either in caves or wherever. And when the revival in the 11th century began and they began to be able to practice again, then a lot of this came from the um, texts that were hidden in the 7th century and then began to be found in the 11th century. Now, the
So
Buddhists would tell you that we just incorporated the Buddhist teachings, and made it our own. But there's really been more of an amalgamation than each side claims the other side borrowed from them.
So that was going to be my next question: is when you adopt another religion in order to practice your own, isn't there a certain amount of enmeshment that goes on then that goes to the future?
Yes, and that's why I said historically it's difficult because, like I said, the Buddhists claim that the Bönpos borrowed their stuff, and the Bönpos said, "No, no, you guys took ours." So,
How do we know how much was retrieved of the original Bon traditions when they had to be unearthed in caves?
well, they have the whole library of set traditional texts, and those they know where they came from. Now, there are some that have been continuously passed down orally, orally for thousands of years, and then were written down at a particular date. Others were written and found. They're called terma, Terma, and they're found, and those are noted as being found. And then there are some where people have said, "Oh, I received this by channeling," and they wrote it down. But it's all documented as to where each one came from and how it was found.
Well, that's useful.
Yes, yes,
What fascinates me is how ancient this religion is, and
yes.
it's still being practiced today. How similar do you think it is today from the original?
Mm. I think the Dzogchen that I was talking that I mentioned, the Tantric Dzogchen, the Dzogchen is identical because it has been passed down orally and then written, and it's not allowed to be changed. That's part of the tradition is that you're not allowed to change it. Occasionally, a master will come along that will write commentary, which is sometimes helpful for their students. But in terms of the text is not changed, and so that part of it is the same according to history and tradition. I think some of the rituals for everyday life may have evolved somewhat based on the fact that everyday life is a little different now than it was back then.
Well, language is too, and interpretation of language. I mean, we run into this with the Bible. Well, is it the King James version, or is it the this, or is it the that? And the same chapter can sound very, very different based on how it was translated. Is there some pollution that's gone on in that way?
I don't have a good way to analyze that because the texts are all in Tibetan. And so the Tibetans, I have seen with it coming to the West, I have seen several different teachers translate the texts, and they are very slightly different, but in essence, they are exactly the same. And as you begin to study, you begin to learn specific words that are so that you can actually, even if you don't speak Tibetan, you can actually follow the text. And when you can see certain words come up, then you know that's what that means. So I think for the most part, they are essentially the same. Different teachers will they are taught to be extremely careful and to not change this stuff. At least that's what they tell us they were taught. And since every teacher starts a teaching with who they are, what their lineage is, who taught them, where they got the transmission for this, and how come they're qualified to teach this, and then they say, and we're not allowed to change this stuff, you have to assume that it's pretty much the same because every teacher that I've taught from, that's the way they start their lecture. Now, when people ask them a question, they will interpret it to the certain degree for that question. But for the most part, the texts are same.
I wish we had that kind of accountability in a lot of the things we do today, don't you?
Yes, yes, yes. And it's that very thing that made me think about these people because I would hear that over and over again. Now, it took me a good number of years for that stuff to begin to sink in and to understand that this was such an important part of the Bun tradition. And then I began to hear that there were only 4 masters who had been able to escape from Tibet that were still alive. And so I just thought these are people's stories that need to be told, and we were able to go and talk to them and listen to their stories, and it was fascinating to hear the trials and tribulations that they went to within Tibet and then in their escape with Chinese takeover.
Well, we'll have to go deeper into that because it sounds doggone interesting. But
Yes.
it is time for a commercial break. So
Okay.
stay with us. Jackie and I will
Yes.
continue to explore Bon as an evolutionary tool. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
Are you ready for a tale that will leave you on the edge of your seat? Get ready to dive into the gripping memoir by Bart Sibrel titled Moon Man. Bart Sibrel takes you on a heart-pounding journey, unmasking the truth behind America's famous Apollo missions. Prepare yourself for hair-raising encounters with agents from the U.S. government's top secret agencies. In Moonman, Sibrel fearlessly reveals his real-life espionage adventures, shining a light on one of the CIA's best-kept secrets. Brace yourself for shocking revelations, including Sibrel's discovery of privately recorded audio exposing an Apollo astronaut's chilling plot, a plot orchestrated by the CIA. That's right. As Sibrel unveils this groundbreaking evidence, it becomes clear that there is much more to the Apollo missions than meets the eye. Could it be that we've been deceived all along? Moonman is a gripping page-turner that challenges everything you thought you knew. It's a mind-bending journey into the unknown, where the line between truth and fiction becomes blurred. Don't miss this opportunity to uncover the secrets hidden for decades. Let your curiosity guide you as you join Bart Sibrel on his quest to find the truth. Moonman, available now at Sibrel.com. That's Sibrel.com. Prepare to have your beliefs shaken to the very core.
How can Bon be used as an evolutionary tool? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Jackie Cole. Her website, flightofthebonmonks.com. Jackie, just before we entered into this, before the break, we were talking about how you actually got to speak with some of the living masters that tell me who they were and what how did they survive what they were in? How old were they?
The the person most that's still alive, and he's still alive today, he's 99, that is the most attributed to saving Bun is Yungsan Tenzin Namdak Rinpoche. And Yungsan is a title, it's an honorary title. Tenzin Namdak is his name. Rinpoche, of course, means special one or beloved one. And so he has an honorific at the beginning and at the end of his name. Yungsan was a, I'll call him Yungsan Rinpoche. Yungsan was a interesting character. He lived in he is a very interesting man. He was determined he's very headstrong, and that's one of the reasons he has been able to do the work that he's been able to do. But he became a monk at a young age, and then was very learned and considered. He was actually the head teacher at the mother monastery Menri in Tibet. But then he left there to go to a monastery further up into Tibet in order to try to raise funds. They rely on donations for everything, of course. Even back 50 in the 50 to 60, 70 years ago, everywhere they all rely on donations. So he was up there when the Chinese, the Chinese invaded Tibet in 1950. And then there was the revolution, the revolt, not revolution, but revolt within Lhasa in 59. And with that, there was a crackdown with the Chinese on religion across the board. In Tibet, religion was so intertwined with the government that there wasn't really any way to tell them apart. And so when the Chinese took over the government, then they needed to likewise begin to maintain control of the monasteries. And so they started persecuting all the monasteries and all of the monks. The people from Minri decided to escape. They left and went up to this monastery where Yongzhen Rinpoche was. And then they all left from there to try to escape out to Nepal, which is where most everybody went, Nepal or India. And Nepal was along the border there, along the Himalayas. You cross the Himalayas and then you're into Nepal.
Are there roads, or is this
No,
a
it's
trek
all
via
trails.
foot?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
foot. It's all by foot. There's no roads. And in
About what
fact, it's
altitude?
one of the reasons that Tibet had such a hard time putting up an effort to disperse the Chinese, is because they were so backward. And this was by choice, because they liked being able to be solitary, and they didn't want to offend the earth spirits. And so they just kept everything very, very, very low key. So Tibet is an altitude, Lhasa is at 12.5. And then the Changtong, which is the big plateau on the other side of another line of mountains, starts at 15
Oh
and
my
goes up
goodness.
from there. Minri Monastery, the mother monastery there, is at 18,000 feet. So it's interesting. Recently, they found out that Tibetans have a genetic gene that allows them to live at altitude better than the rest of us. So when we went, I got altitude sickness so bad.
Oh, I can only imagine.
So, but nevertheless, they are made for it, and so they were walking, and then they were ambushed by the Chinese, and Yongzhen was shot and left for dead. And there were a number of miniature stories where he got saved over and over again. People and events occurred that opened a path for him to continue to live. And it was magic. And the protectors come down to help. I don't know, but I can tell you just story after story of things that occurred to save this man. And he eventually walked out. He ended up in Kathmandu, where he was just met up with this British Tibetologist named David Snellgrove, who had funding from the Rockefeller Foundation to
Goodness.
bring Tibetans to London to learn more about Tibet and their religions. And David Snellgrove, for some reason, picked Bön. And so he took 3 Bön masters to London, which Yongzhen went with that. And there he was able to write the first book in English about Bön, and then also learn English and make connections and so forth, that then when he came back to India, was able to use those connections to establish a refugee camp, or actually a settlement in India for the Bönpos who had left Tibet.
Amazing. So, was he one of the ones that you got to interview?
Yes, yes.
Phenomenal.
He is still alive and living in Kathmandu. And yes, and was so kind to share his story, which actually brought up a lot of bad memories for him, but he was willing to share the story anyway. And so it was fascinating to talk to him about that part of the history, but also it was so it so strengthened my faith in that you could see all the reasons why we have that. He had the devotion, he had the faith, he had the determination, and he used all that in order to save his religion.
And that certainly would apply to our lives today, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yes, it would
Yes. Yeah.
indeed.
And speaking of which, how do you see this ancient religion that's been
Yeah.
preserved? How do you see it serving our evolution? How do you see it serving us today?
I don't wake up in the morning without thinking about how I can be of service to other beings. And in part, that's the way my mama raised me, but it's also reinforced by this religion. And so I think that by having the tradition of the Bon religion reinforce and give you um, tools in your toolkit that can help you to continue to have determination and compassion and find peace and study your inner being so that you can edge towards enlightenment and peace. So there's nothing more than we all need right now.
You won't get any argument out of me on that one. And we certainly need something, don't we? So let's go back a little bit to,
Sure.
we don't have too much time left here, but I want to discuss Bon as a healing modality.
Yeah.
I understand how frequency wise it,
Yes.
it attunes a person and they can reestablish balance or counterbalance what they're lacking with the different deities. How about herbs and that sort of thing? Did they use herbs? Do they use herbs?
There's Tibetan traditional medicine uses herbs. Now, I'm not trained in it. I've had lectures on it and seen a little bit of it. I'm trained in traditional Chinese medicine, and I did acupuncture with my animals when I was working as a veterinarian. And Tibetan medicine is similar in that it deals with the different you use the pulse and the purposes, and then you have medicine, and there's also herbs that work, and then also meditation practices that go along with it. So I think that traditional Chinese medicine now, is there a section of traditional Chinese medicine that's separate for Bun? I don't think so, but I don't know that for sure.
Right.
So,
Okay.
but the traditional Chinese medicine, of course, can be very useful in healing.
Well, it's that time of the show when I get to ask you, what's your mission?
My personal mission is to try to practice enough to achieve enlightenment, but mostly what I'm working on is to try to make my life and the life of people around me and beings around me as best as we can make in the circumstances that we're in.
Mhm. That's a beautiful mission and much needed.
Thank you.
It's much needed. What would you like to share? What can you share with our audience to give us hope in these times that seem to be dark based on your traditions?
One of the things that we have that is a teaching in our teaching is as a lesson of impermanence, and that when it's all going to change, there is permanence in that everything changes, and we sort of say thank goodness, because then the sun will rise in the morning and the new crops will grow because the seeds change into plants and so on and so forth. And so if we can remember impermanence, then we can remember that even in dark days, this is going to change. And in good days, to celebrate our good days, but to not take them for granted. And so that's what I would say based on the Bön that I've learned there in terms of accepting impermanence and being happy for the things when it's good and to know when it's bad that it's going to change.
Those are words to live by for sure. Absolutely. We're just about to close. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
I just wanted to say that these people that I've got to meet and write about are so incredibly eh, are such incredible influences in terms of inspiration.
Mm.
And so I feel very lucky to have been able to be not only a part of this Bön tradition, but also to be inspired by them because they just were incredible. It's a
Well,
special stories.
well, we are out of time. Jackie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking to you so much.
Our guest this hour has been Jackie Cole. Jackie is the author of Flight of the Bon Monks, War, Persecution, and the Survival of Tibet's Oldest Religion. To find out more about Jackie, you can visit her on her website, flightofthebonmonks.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit our website, missionevolution.org. And join us next time because this mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to an evolving world.